Okay. Oh boy, not again. It was fine until I started recording. This is weird. Hopefully, yeah, good. It's over. I hope. Zoom, you're letting us down, buddy. All right. We're about to start the Parsha today, and Parsha Mishpatim 5783. Quite a bit to say about it. It's worth pointing out, first of all, that that Parsha Mishpatim has a number of mitzvot, and there's no really good way to summarize it. Almost every tractate in the Talmud is based on a verse somewhere here in this parsha. So it's very important parsha, and at the same time, there's a lot of important. There's a lot of information. Couldn't be really summarized. Think of a mitzvah; it's probably in this parsha somewhere. Shabbat, the holidays, how to treat slaves, how to treat other people, how to return lost objects. You name it, there's a good chance it's in this week's parsha, or at least hinted to somehow. But it's not just that. It's not just this dry list of mitzvot. There's a lot going on that's deeper. And this is one of those reasons why it's important to read the parsha itself. I encourage all of you, every one of you, man, woman, child, to learn Shnei Mikra Ve'echa Targum, to learn the parsha in Hebrew twice, translation and commentary at least once each year, and it'll open your mind to a lot of things. I'll just give you an example. It's not really part of the class. I don't have the material to share with you, but in Chomat Anoch, the Chida, whose grave I was zocheh to visit last week, the Chida mentions that there's an allusion in this parsha to a holiday that's coming up in just a few weeks. Purim is coming up; it's around the corner, and he says in chapter 21, verse 11. If you have the Sefer, if you have a Chumash, you can open it up. It talks about a slave and who goes out without any kind of compensation. V'yatsa chinam ein kasaf. He goes out. Female slave goes out for free without getting paid any money. And if you look at the last letters of each of these words, you have a hey and a mem and a nun. V'yatsa chinam ein, right? It's a hey, mem, nun. Exactly in order spells out Haman. Boo. So what's the rationale? What does this teach you? So he says that the Jewish people were attacked at this time by Haman during the Purim story without any kind of, for no pay and no compensation. He was willing to do it all for free. He was willing to pay for it. He hated the Jews so much. And still, and he didn't even, and he was going to pay for it. He gave the money, but Achashverosh hated the Jews just as much, or as the Talmud says, even more. He gave the money back, as it says in Esther 3:11. It says the silver is given to you. The people are also, you do with them whatever you want to do. So the Jewish people were under threat for free. So that's hinted to in this week's parsha. Right before, very close to the holiday of Purim. This week is also a special week for on the calendar. It's not only a Shabbat Mevarchim, but also this Shabbat is going to be the first of the 4 Parshiot, Parshat Shkalim, and that's worthy of mention. And a good reason to come to shul if you were planning. I don't know why you would, but if you're planning something otherwise, this is a good reason to come to shul this week. We have some ideas I'd like to share, the sort of a deeper dive, as we call it, into the parsha with the various verses. And I think this is the best time to do that. Let's get to our source sheet that I emailed you actually it was yesterday. Let's get to the top of the source sheet this time. How about that? All right. So we're obviously we can't learn each verse in great detail. We'll learn a few, and of course, last year we learned a few, and the year before that. So we've got, God willing, if you're watching this on YouTube, you have now at least 3 hours worth of Parsha class, besides the other Parsha videos that I make. Parsha class videos, you now have 3 hours worth. While you're cooking or doing other things, you could listen along and gain something about the beauty of Parshat Mishpatim. All right, let's get right into it. And embarrassing, I couldn't remember the source for where I heard this idea. Yeah, let's but I can at least share the idea, and then hopefully at some later time I'll try to find the source. But it's an important idea, and so we'll get right into it. The verse, chapter 21, verse 7. Right? It's about 7 verses into the parsha, and it says, ish et bito la'ama, if a man sells his daughter as a slave, lo teitze kitzeit av akavad, and then she doesn't go out like other slaves would. In other words, all slaves go out for free after 6 years. She does that too, but a male slave, a male Jewish slave, has the opportunity to stay even longer and basically give up his entire life and freedom to be a slave to this person, and it's very much discouraged, as other verses we've learned before very much indicate. Like, she does not have that option. She cannot stay on as a slave forever. I'll get rid of this. Is there a way to get rid of this? It's bothering me. Okay, there. All right. Sorry about that. I don't know if you even saw that. Okay, so the verse continues. The question that's asked, and like I said, I can't remember who said this, who asked the question, who gave the answer, but the answer is brilliant. And if I find it, I'll try to quote it correctly. But the question is, and you really need more context to this. So the entire parsha up to now is spoken about in third person. What that means, in first person. If you buy, if you do, right? Ki tikna eved ivri. If you buy an eved ivri, and it goes in that kind of language throughout until it comes to this point, and it doesn't say ki timkor ish et ki timkor et bitcha. If you sell your daughter, it doesn't say it like that. It says if a man, generic man, sells his daughter, etc., etc. Now let's give some brief halachot about this idea, because it's not very clear so far. The Torah is, like I said, this is the basis of almost all of Shas. Almost all of the Talmud is based on verses in this week's parsha, but that doesn't mean that this parsha just explicitly tells you all the details. It's the other way around. In fact, that's what the Talmud is for, is to sort of extricate these laws from the, as Rav Hirsch says, from the, the notes, right? The science notes that you remember from school that you took, and then you have to remember that a couple of words, a couple of lines of notes meant like 10, 15 minutes of lecture. And when you read those notes again, that's what it means. So the same thing with Jewish law. The oral law is huge, immeasurable, infinite, in fact. People can come up with all kinds of questions, and the rabbi needs to come up with the rabbis need to come up with answers based on the tradition. They can't just make stuff up. So that's the case. So the rule here is that a man would sell his daughter as a slave under very, very specific conditions. She has to be a very certain age. So she's not adult yet and not a child anymore. She's sort of an in-between stage, to say 11 years old or so. And he can only do this, he can only sell her as a slave if he is literally dirt poor. He has no ability to sustain her. He cannot feed her, clothe her, etc. We need some sort of system to take care of her. So her becoming a servant to somebody else who is potentially going to maybe marry her or marry her off to his son and make her a proper woman. So in that case, there's a system, there's a sort of safety net to protect this girl from a much worse fate. And because this is such a negative thing, because we don't really wish this on anybody, to have to sell their daughter into slavery, nobody should want to do it. Nobody should plan on it, and we want to discourage this as much as possible. Therefore, this commentary, whose name I can't remember right now, says that's why the Torah here speaks in the third person instead of the first person, as it's been doing up until now. They don't want to say when you sell your daughter. You sell. I don't want to hear that thing. That's a terrible idea. But not only that, there's a more important lesson that we can learn from this kind of dialogue. It's a lesson that's also taught in the very beginning, very top of the Gemara in Moed Katan, Daf Yud Chet, 18a. It tells a story there. It's we have here in the source sheet. Pinchas Hua Demar, right? So when Pinchas, who was the brother of Mar, Itra Be Milta, a bad thing happened to him. That's another way of saying that a relative of his died. Somebody he loved died. Right? Al Shmuel Mishael Tama Mine. Shmuel came to console him. Chazanhu Ufotre Dahavu Nefishan. He saw that Pinchas's nails were extremely long and ugly. Amar le, amai lo shekalahu. Why didn't you cut them? So we know a mourner is not supposed to cut their nails. So Amar le, so Pinchas said back to him, I b'didei hava mi mizalzalat, imazal be kulehai. If this kind of thing would have happened to you, in other words, if you lose one of your relatives, wouldn't you do the same thing? Wouldn't you also keep this law? Wouldn't you also not cut your nails? His the Talmud here paraphrases a verse in Kohelet 10:5 that when somebody makes a statement, even by mistake, it comes from the ruler. What that means is, even if you're not careful with what you say, your words will become true, even if perhaps you did not intend them that way. And then, because he said that, that's what we were led to understand it anyway, something bad happened to Shmuel, right? Because Pinchas said, if you lose one of your relatives, would you also be, so lenient with the rules of cutting nails? If you lose your relative? Pinchas spoke like that? Yeah. And when he did, Shmuel lost out. Shmuel lost one of his relatives. Al Pinchas achua the Mishael Tamamine. Pinchas, his brother, went in to console him, to make him feel better. Shaklinhu l'turfei chavtinu la'ape. He took his nails. This is a Shmuel took his nails and threw them at Pinchas, who's now visiting him. Amarle, and he said to him, Leit lach brit kruta lisfatayim. You made a deal with your lips. In other words, you made this happen because of the words you used. And this brings up a very important concept that we have. And this is what we're sort of talking about here. The Torah is trying to teach you here by speaking in the third person, Instead of in the first person, when it's talking about this terrible thing, it's trying to teach you this lesson that never curse somebody. No, don't open up your mouth and say that something bad should happen to somebody, even if you don't mean it as a curse. Right? If you lose your relative, what do you mean if you lose your relative? Don't speak like that. If a person loses their relative, speak indirectly. Speak indirectly when you talk about negative things. That's a very Jewish idea. And that's where we're holding. Okay. All right. Next verse we're going to learn. We're going to skip all the way to chapter 23, verse 1. Yeah. Lo tisa shem hashav al teshtiyadcha im rasha liyot eid chamas. We're talking about the rules of a judge, and a judge is not allowed to listen to shem hashav, to false testimony, obviously. Al teshtiyadcha al rasha, and not to join, and not to agree, not to become friendly with the rasha, with the person who is doing the wrong. Liyot eid chamas, to become a witness to evil. So what does this mean? Not to listen to false rumors, as Safari translates it. Says Rashi, don't listen to something, don't listen to false testimony. And he continues and says, Azhara, this is a warning to judges. Besides the prohibition of lashon hara, that the judge is not allowed to listen to something that's false, also the judge should be careful not to listen to the testimony of one party when the second party isn't there. Now, I've spoken about this, I believe, in a drasha a year or two ago, and I just want to bring out the source here for everybody to see. There's a beautiful idea that Rav Chaim Shmulevitz writes about in Sichot Musar. I'm sorry for the copy. It's not. I didn't do a great job of scanning this today. I apologize. But he quotes this. He says this lesson is not just for judges. This is a lesson that we can all gain something from. And we should. So he says that this is for a dayan, for a judge, not to listen to one party without the other. He quotes the Rambam saying the same thing, and then he gives a few examples. But what he really wants to get into is al derech zeh metzinu the aver inish achzuke dibure. A person should be careful. It's actually the title of this essay, by the way, if I'm not mistaken. A person should be careful to make sure what they hear first. Could be that there was a mistake made in the first statement. That becomes the truth for you. Yachad im ad pasul vatla edut kula. So, if you're going to, the thing is, we are, as human beings, are very much influenced by our first encounter to something. The first time you hear this testimony about this case, regardless of what you're going to hear later on that's going to disprove it, there's a seed of that first testimony that's going to stick in your head. And if you're only listening to that and not even seeing that there's a second side to the story, it's going to influence, it's going to paint a picture in your head of what occurred. You weren't there, you're just a judge listening to testimony, and you're going to paint a picture using your imagination based on that first testimony. And that will become the truth. Even if it's disproven, some of it will still remain in your head as the truth. And you won't be able to extricate it. You're not going to be able to remove it from your image of what actually happened. This is very true. Think about it, of lessons if you've taken if you've learned history in America, let's say before the 1980s or so, right? You've probably heard a much more positive image of what American history is all about. We have President's Day coming up, so it's sort of it's on my mind, right? So later historians, and certainly later teachers, high school teachers, when I was in high school already, and definitely ever since the publishing of Lies My Teacher Told Me, history teachers are much more negative about the impact of American history. It's not a surprise that most people today, most young people today, certainly don't think of Christopher Columbus as a hero. That's exactly how he was taught to us and to older generations, younger than me. No matter, even Native Americans were taught that Columbus was a hero. Think of all the great things that he's accomplished for you. Never mind what he did and how he did it. The slavery, the abuse, the terrible things that he did were not taught. So the picture in our head is that he's a hero. If you find out later on he did bad things, etc., now that's going to have to be balanced against the image you have of him in your head already. It's sort of stuck there, right? That's Christopher Columbus. Oh, he did some bad things, but he's Christopher Columbus, and it always goes back to that, right? So that's how our minds work, and that's true for anybody. Think of anybody who you consider a hero today. Go fast forward to the presidents that we're going to be celebrating on President's Day. George Washington, Abraham Lincoln. Yes, they were great men. They did amazing, great things, but they were just men. They were not perfect, and they made mistakes, and some very terrible, egregious ones that might not have gotten them elected if they would have happened, today, in today's day and age, for better or for worse, I should add. Okay, so I'm sorry. So that's because of that, and he gives lots of examples throughout Tanakh and throughout Shas, and then he concludes. Just want to get to his conclusion. V'kol shekain ha'adam atzmo nish'ar be'enei atzmo naki v'tzadik. And think about how you think about yourself, right? You justify all of your actions. In the end, you're the good guy. You're the hero of your story, or heroine, right? However you want to say that, right? Before the sin, after the sin, he haskana hagdola ki so this is true for most people. So if you're not, that's a busy morning. Yeah. So that being the case, there's that being the case, we have to really consider how we think about ourselves and how we reflect upon our own actions, where even though we lived through it and that's our first testimony, we need to always try to balance it against other ideas. Maybe we did the wrong thing, and maybe we can fix it. Maybe there's something we can do about it. Good. Okay, I'm gonna have to. All right, let's take care of that later. All right, we're gonna skip 20 verses or 19 verses to chapter 23, verse 20. Chaf Gimel Chaf. This is already after the mitzvot. We've dealt with many of the mitzvot in previous years. There is also part of the parsha is a story, also the continuation of the story of the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, when Moshe Rabbeinu himself goes up to Har Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights. Jewish people say, we will listen, not in that order. I mean, that's the order they said it in. But they did that before he went up to the mountain. There's also mention of an angel that's going to be sent to help bring the Jewish people into Israel. Behold, I am sending an angel before you, to protect you by derech on the road, and he is going to bring you to the place that I am preparing for you. In other words, Israel. Who's going to bring you there? An angel. Sounds good, right? So there's a problem. And the problem is brought down by Rashi here. Rashi says, Rashi says, Kan nitbasru ha'atidim lechato. Here, the Jewish people are being told that in the future they will sin, because we know from other places, as he's going to show, that Hashem, after the sin with the golden calf, Hashem said, "I'm going to send an angel who's going to bring you to Israel. Not me directly anymore." Hashem was going to send them directly to Israel. He says, "I'm not doing it anymore. I quit, and I'm sending an angel to do my job instead. I'm assigning a substitute, and there's going to be less direct communication between you and me. From now on, you need to talk through this substitute, through this angel, right?" The Shekhinah told them, "I am no longer in your midst. You're not going to feel the Hashem's radiance wherever you go and whatever you do. From now on, you have the angel, and the angel will report back to me, and I will tell the angel what to tell you, etc." So that's Rashi. Asks the Oznaim Torah of Zaman Sorotskin. We have an interesting thing going on here, because over here in this verse, I didn't really give you the whole context, but the next verse, you don't have the Jewish people crying, falling on their knees, saying, "Please, please don't. Oh, we didn't mean it." No, it's nothing like that. Khan says, "Is not in the Torah." Khan nisbashu atidim lichato. This is a quote of Rashi. The Mefarshim, the commentators ask a question. All right. So all the Mefarshim ask, "Im zehu oto hamalach." If this is the same malach she'amar Hashem el Moshe acharei ma'aseh egel, if this is the same angel we're talking about that I just mentioned, that Hashem told Moshe is going to send the Jewish people. So this indirect hashgacha, as Rashi is definitely alluding, sheishlach im Yisrael lama lo malchu Moshe b'nei Yisrael al zeh. Why aren't Moshe and the Jewish people, why aren't they crying over this? Kasher asu zot sham, shenamar, it says they did over there. V'yishma ha'am et hadavar hara hazeh v'yit avlu. The nation heard this terrible thing and they mourned. And Moshe Amar, im ein panecha holchim al talu mizeh. And Moshe Rabbeinu even complained, "Di lo kasha midi," but really, that's not a big question. For him, it's not a big question. But again, just to ask the question that turns out to not be a big question. What he said is that the Jewish people are warned that after the sin of the golden calf, that Hashem is no longer with them as he was before, and therefore an angel will take them into Israel. And of course, this is terrible news for the Jewish people, and they and he sorry. And the Jewish people mourned and were sad about it. If they're sad about it, why aren't they sad about it here when Hashem tells them about this angel at this point? So, so this is not a really big question, right? Why? Sha'ata here now, how you Yisrael betuchim achrei Mamad Har Sinai. The Jewish people at this point are full of faith. This is right after the giving of the Torah. This is still during Har Sinai. Shelo yachdu, they haven't sinned yet. Sharei pasko zu amatam. V'gam Hashem amar, ani amarti elokim atem uvnei elyon kulchem. Right? Quotes the pasuk in Tehillim. Shadashu azal mikra zeh al meitav beit Yisrael acharei kabbalat Torah. The Jewish people, after receiving the Torah, were at such a high level. They had no issue. They had absolutely no concern that they would ever sin and then have to have the golden calf with the golden calf. Or they didn't know about the golden calf. They didn't think that an angel would be guiding them. They could take this as a warning, right? This is a warning that if you sin, there will be an angel. Yeah, we're not going to sin. Why would we sin? We just saw H-Shem. We just saw the splitting of the sea a few days ago. Here we are. We're at Har Sinai. Huge miracles are happening. There's thunder and lightning and all kinds of amazing miracles. And I hear Hashem's voice, right? What kind of sin are we talking about? There's not going to be a sin. When you're in that state of rapture, there's going to be a sin? No way. That doesn't even enter your heart. Can you even consider the possibility that you might steal something after you just heard God's voice telling you, thou shalt not steal? Okay, kidnap, whatever. All right, so same thing here. But aval acha masa ha'egel, but after the sin of the golden calf, shenaflu mimadregatam, after they fell from their higher level, hayu choshishim, then they were actually concerned. Shema yechatu od, maybe they're going to sin more. You know that once you sin once, you opened up the door to possibly sin more. That rhymes. I didn't intend it to. As nitavlu ma'od al shmua kiba, and that's why they mourned so much when they heard this statement that this angel is going to take them into Israel. Asher yelech malachim, that an angel is going to come with them. Shelo yisal ifishehem. It's not going to be just this direct hashgacha as they expected with Hashem. Aval etzem hadavar enu muvan. Lama nemra parsha zu kan terem. So now there's another question. Right? But there's another question. Why were they told anything here? Why does this have to be mentioned at all? If they're not sinning, why are you giving them the idea? Why does Hashem warn them that an angel is going to accompany them if they sin? Nearly bear et zeh ofen nifla. Here's a beautiful explanation that you can say based on the words of the Rambam. He has an introduction he writes in his commentary on the Mishnah on Zraim, which actually we read part of, or actually I think all of. It was when we started Mishnah Yomi, 2022. I believe it was January 1st or so. We started Mishnah Yomi. It happened to be the yard site of the Rambam, so we learned his Perush there, and we read some of his commentary from the introduction. So what he writes in, by the way, he writes this also in other places. Let me find it real quick. Yeah. She'im HaKadosh Baruch Hu maftiach la'adam la'asod lo tova. If Hashem tells a person he's going to do something good for him, then that person sins. Hashem has the right to cancel his promise to that person. This is what Yaakov was afraid of when it says V'yar Yaakov, that he was very afraid. He's at the meeting with his brother Esau. Aval im yiftoch Hashem liyachad, but if liyachid or litzibur, and if somebody believes in Hashem, whether it's an individual or a whole group, b'sorah tova al yidei navi. So yeah. Sorry. Okay, so if Hashem, if Hashem promises something good to an individual or to a group through a prophet, and then those people, whoever were being promised good, sin, Hashem will make that thing come true because of what we don't want to make Hashem doesn't want to make the Navi seem like a liar. The Navi promised something through Hashem, and so now, even if we don't deserve it anymore, since the Navi promised it, it has to come true. This is a similar idea is in the Gemara in Shabbat 55. If Hashem says something, he's going to do something good, even if it wasn't so much of a strong promise. Nevertheless, Hashem is not going to back out of it. Beer Harambam Matam, and the Rambam gives a reason for that. Kadesh lo yitvada hanavi itbatel chas v'shalom emunat hanavua. We don't want the Navi to look bad and for people to lose faith in prophecy in general. Can you imagine? And also we have to remember another important concept. Hashem always makes the medicine before the disease. Here the medicine is going to be, I'll just summarize and you can look it up on your own. We're getting limited in time here, but the reason why it has to be mentioned here is because this malach isn't just a story Hashem is telling you. This is a promise that you will get into the promised land. You will get into Israel, whether it's through me directly if you don't sin, or if you do sin, it's going to come through an angel. The Jewish people will sin, and Hashem knew that. And so he had to install into the system a way for the Jewish people to not lose complete hope and faith in the fact that they're going to get to Israel. And there, the little thing that they can hang on to, the little itsy bitty promise or bit of a promise that they can still have even after they sin, is that they'll get to Israel through an angel, if not through God himself. That is the refuah to the Makkah. The fact that the Jewish people were going to sin, Hashem knew. And he had to create the refuah before the Makkah. He had to have the medicine in place. The medicine is that this faith, this undying knowledge, this complete confidence in the fact that they will get to Israel. And the way that they will do it is through an angel. If they sin, and they do, so it will be through an angel, or they do some negotiating, etc. We're not going to get into that now, or it'll be through Hashem. So that's why he has to say it here before they sin, before it's even a potential sin, before they can even think about, oh, maybe we'll make some mistake. They're in this natural high of just having received the 10 commandments. Sin is the furthest thing from their mind, and so now he just has to back it up with well, what if you do sin? An angel will take you to Israel, and so later on they have that to hold on to give them confidence. Okay. Vikak Sefer, so we're going to skip to 24:7. 24:7, it's nice. So this is the famous verse that the Jewish people say those very, very important 2 words. Vikak Sefer Habris, Vikra Beznei Ha'am. Moshe read the book of the covenant to the ears of the Jewish people. Kol Asher Diber Hashem, and they said everything that Hashem says, Nase Venishma, we will do and we will hear. Beautiful. Those 2 words are what make the Jewish people, and the receivers of the Torah, the fact that they said, we will do and we will hear. Now, the Gemara and the Talmud, the Zohar, they all talk about how great the Jewish people are because of this commitment, right? Because without knowing all of the mitzvot and without knowing everything they're going to get and everything they're going to do, they still said, we will do it. And then we'll learn the details, right? And there are a lot of details. Shelves full of books behind me and in front of me and all around, right? And these aren't even all the books in the world, right? Of Torah knowledge, explaining the mitzvot, explaining how we do what we need to do, and how we're supposed to think about Hashem. All of that is from the fact that we do that after we do the mitzvot. In other words, we do the mitzvot whether or not we understand them. We do the mitzvot whether or not we really, besides understand, that we can get further into them, feel them, and attach ourselves to them in some sort of emotional way. It's not 100% possible for all people. Give me one moment. Okay, sorry about that. So the Beit Halevi, who we haven't quoted very much this year, but in previous years we've had quite a bit from the Beit Halevi. His commentary on Chumash and the Chumash ends pretty soon after this parsha, unfortunately. But from what we have, we can still get a lot out of it. Okay, B'zeh Yivar ha parsha Amar V'ata Hored Alecha Malach, etc. Melecha, sorry. That's not what I wanted to start. Sorry. Give me 1 second. He quotes Onkelos. Okay, here we go. So he quotes the Zohar, Pashat Noach actually. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then of course the Midrash it says Itam Rabbi Shmuel b'Rav Nachman Nahaya Lavatenu Lakabel et Torah Lomer Kol Asher Diber Hashem Nasa v'Nishma Shema Nae Haya Lahem Laimor Allah Alecha Yisrael et Maha. So the greatness of the Jewish people is in the fact that they said these words, we will do and we will listen. That's not such a big deal. I saw somebody put it, I'm not going to say it's not a big deal, but the question is, why is it a big deal? It's not that difficult to say, I'll do it, and then I'll find out all the details. People do that all the time with their, software terms of service agreements. They do it all the time. Apple or some other company says, read through this 40-page document and then sign on the bottom that you agree. And who reads all that stuff, right? You just agree. You don't know if you're, signing your life away. You don't know what your other options are. You just want to use the software. You don't really think about it. So the Jewish people wanted to use the software. They didn't really think about it. They said, okay, we'll do it. Then we'll learn. So why is it such a big deal that they did that? People do that all the time, unfortunately. It could have been for a bad reason that they said Nasa v'Nishma. It's such a great thing that they don't learn first. Right? L'chora einu move on klal ma shayach l'chaber hanei shnei naim l'omar kavat Torah haya no va'ega lo haya no ki hu davar hefach mamash. Right. Why was this so? And the Midrash says that they got crowns for it, right? Rak le'inyan dehem amru Allah alecha Yisrael lechora haya lahem lomar lekenu haya gama omer b'klal aval hem amru lekecha kimidaber acherim v'lo al atzim. They actually were able, because they said our God, they agreed with Hashem wholeheartedly as a nation, not as only individuals. Shall avodah zara ina talui b'masa lechuda, rak ikara talui b'hitztaref b'masa ki hakavana halev. Whereas avodah zara, and what is eventually going to be their great sin of the golden calf in a few weeks, though that sin is an individual sin. Even if you do it with a lot of other people, it's your heart that's pulled you to do this terrible thing. Moshe Rabbeinu Amra Allah Alecha V'chol Echad Afilu Usan. I think I'm in the wrong place here. Yeah. Right. So the point is that when they said Nasa v'Nishma, it's not just that they said that; it's that they said it together. right? They said it as a group. The acceptance of the Torah is different than the sin of the golden calf. The golden calf was done by a lot of individuals together. The acceptance of the Torah, the Nasa v'Nishma, was them accepting the Torah together, not as individuals doing it together, as a nation all together. And that's what gave them the right, the reward of being noah, of being beloved by Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. All right, we have time for one other quick idea, God willing. And this is going to, I think, tie up a lot of these thoughts into one very succinct thought. And it's worth mentioning. This is from Darash Moshe, from Moshe Feinstein. It's interesting. I just mentioned earlier that I saw the Chida's grave in Har HaMenuchot last week. I also saw of Moshe Feinstein's grave. They're not too far apart from each other. And down the same alleyway, they're on the far left. Either way, the Moshe Feinstein's grave, it says Rav Moshe on it. It doesn't say, it doesn't even, it says Moshe Feinstein on the other side. But just if you're just looking for it, it just says Rav Moshe. Like this, he's not the only Moshe there. He's not the only Rav Moshe there. But Rav Moshe is a great personality. Yeah. So speaking of Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Moshe, right? Moshe went in the midst of a cloud. This is when he's going up to Har Sinai. This is very, very end of the parsha. Vial el hahar. He went up to the mountain. Vayhi Moshe bahar arbaim yom v'arbaim laila. He was up on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. Okay. Says Rashi, he was within the cloud. What does that mean to be betoch ha'anan? Anan zeh can mean ashanhu. This anan was like an ashan. Anan, ashan, it's like the same thing here in this case. Ashan means not just a cloud. Ashan is billowing smoke, right? Thick smoke. And that's where Hashem made a path for him to walk through. The question we have to ask is, okay, I can close my eyes, I can picture it's a smoky cloud, Hashem made a path, Moshe walked through. But what does it mean? Why would he do that? So says Moshe Feinstein, in Darash Moshe, Betoch Hanan, Perish Rashi, quotes the Rashi, Hinei Vadai Af Im Yelech Moshe Betoch Hanan Mamish. If you would have walked through a cloud, regular cloud, he would have been very, very happy. Right? He would have been thrilled to just do that. He wouldn't have to make any kind of path. Right? Hashem wouldn't have to do a miracle to open up a path in the smoky cloud for Moshe to walk through. What's the point? The point is the Torah is not given in a straightforward, easy manner. There needs to be some struggle. Even a class like this where I get interrupted with phone calls and have the wrong text and can't find, right? There has to be some sort of cloudiness. Right? There has to be some sort of confusion for Hashem to then reward you because of your effort with clarity. What an important lesson. Things are not always clear. Torah, part of the Torah, the Gemara, the whatever you're learning, there could be a lack of clarity sometimes. And that's okay. Not only is it okay, that's exactly the intended point Hashem wanted there to be. Hashem wanted there to be smokiness and confusion, and there needed to be a parting of the way so that Moshe could walk through, so that you can walk through into your Torah and understand your Torah through your effort. V'af kishenichtav ata gam Torah shebal peh lo yoel ma sheiknu kol asfarim shebeolam leida din barur. So for all it's not the Gemara, the Mishnah never gives the law straightforward and easy. Below kabla b'chachmei haTorah shebekol dor v'dor. The wise people of every generation need to struggle and understand and explain, and only then do we understand Torah. There's no such thing as just somebody untrained and without thinking, without trying, as smart as they are, could be the Albert Einstein of the world. You sit down in a Beit Midrash for the first time, open up a Chumash, and understand everything that you read. That's not going to happen. It's not about how smart you are. There has to be a degree of smarts too, no question. But in the end, the most important thing we need to remember is that the Torah that we're receiving is Torah that we're getting through our efforts. All of these kinds of lessons that we see from the Chachamim, from the Chidah, from Zalman Sorotskin, from Chaim Shmulevitz, from Rashi, all of these kinds of wise thoughts and ideas and the connections to the Talmud and how this and that and why it says it like this, all of that is supposed to be a struggle for us. And that's exactly the point of a class like this, right? We're supposed to, I get a lot out of the fact that I have to learn these verses a little more deeply than just like reading it through. Right? I have to look at some commentaries and try to understand them and try to find the right places, right? And eventually we come up with a conclusion. We begin to understand Torah, the holiness of Torah, the greatness of Torah, and that's, God willing, what we'll continue to see together as the years progress and we learn more and more parshiot together. Have a good rest of your week. Take care.